Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councillor Bouchard. Here. Mayor Boulay.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Champlin.
Here.
Councillor Fennessy.
Present.
Councillor Grady Sexton.
Here.
Councillor Keach.
Here.
Councillor Kretovic.
She's excused.
Councillor Mattson.
She is excused, and I hope she feels better soon.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Excused.
Councillor McNamara.
Here.
Councillor Nyan.
Present.
Councillor Pierce.
Here.
Councillor Vice Hawkins.
Here.
And Councillor Todd.
Here.
Okay, good to see everybody. We do have the minutes for September 11th, 2023 of the council meeting. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Anybody, any changes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's adopted. Mr. Manager, would you like to introduce our new Assistant Community Development
Yes.
Director?
Actually, Mr. Walsh can come forward with Mr. Thompson.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. I'm very pleased tonight to introduce Tim Thompson. Tim is our new Assistant Community Development Director. He comes to us with approximately 27 years of experience in New Hampshire. Most recently, he was the Community Development Director in Merrimack for about a dozen years. Prior to that, he's the town planner in Londonderry, New Hampshire, and also worked in the planning department in Rochester. He's going to be working with us. First of all, also importantly, he is a lifelong Concord resident, with the exception of when he was away at school, so he's been here his entire life. He is going to, in his capacity as Assistant Community Development Director, be working on all things economic development, parking, airport, capital budget, and he's also serving as the Assistant Department Head for the Community Development Department, something the department has never had. So very excited to have him here, and looking forward to working with him for a long time. This is week number 4.
Week number 5, actually.
Number 5.
Have you
How
been
time
paid?
flies.
I missed one.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be able to work for the community I've lived in my entire life. It's long been a goal of mine to be able to give back to the city in this nature. I've had some time, spent a few years on both the Zoning Board of Adjustment and the Architectural Design Review Committee. Just actually resigned from the ADR to take this position, but I've long had a fondness for the city. It's been my base of operations. It's always been that central location where I've been in commuting distance to the other places I've worked. But the opportunity to live and work in Concord has been a really lifelong goal, and I really can't be happier to be part of the team here in the city, and I'm looking forward to a very productive relationship. Thank you.
Welcome. Anybody? All right, we'll see you around.
Thank you.
Okay, and now it is my pleasure to welcome our state senator, Senator Whitley. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the council. It's good to be here. I appreciate being able to get on the agenda here. I'm just going to pass out one little document. So what I would like to do is just sort of share what I do over at the State House, a little bit about the type of legislation that I typically work on, and then just make sure that you know that I'm here for you and to hear from you, and I want this to be a relationship that's an open one, and one that can go both ways. So if you don't know me, again, my name is Becky Whitley. I've been the state senator from District 15, which includes the city of Concord, since 2020. I moved to Concord right out of law school and started my family here. I now live in Hopkinton. Hopkinton and Bow are also in my district. The district used to be Concord, Warner, Henniker, and Hopkinton, but it just recently changed. But I do represent the entire city of Concord, and I'm very happy to be here. So in the Senate, I serve on the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. So those are two very busy committees, and I see some friends here who are frequently in front of me. So any bill related, of course, to the judiciary, or any bill related to the court system or anything from abortion rights to gun rights, that's all going to Judiciary Committee. It's a very busy committee. We even hear things related to DCYF and things like that. Health and Human Services Committee, of course, we hear everything related to Medicaid and health insurance and anything related to health care in the state. So again, those issues, if there are impacts that I need to know about from the city that relate to those issues, I would certainly love to hear that. I'm a lawyer by training. I started my career in Concord at the Disability Rights Center. I was there for many years. Right before I was in the Senate, I worked in children's health policy. So most of my professional career has been in supporting children and families, many of whom are navigating, our very complicated service delivery system, have high needs, maybe have fallen through the cracks of the state systems we've set up to serve them. So a lot of my work is really navigating those systems and trying to plug those holes, break down silos, and make sure our most vulnerable children and families are getting what they need. I know those are also issues that you all deal with in the city with your residents, and I need to hear about those gaps as well from you. So just a little summary of the bills that I worked on this past year to give you a sort of flavor of the kind of bills that I personally introduced. So this year, this past session, 2023, I filed 12 bills. 8 of those bills were signed into law. 1 was vetoed by the governor. 1 was ITL'd. 1 was re-referred back to committee, so stay tuned for that. That was my preschool bill. And 1 was tabled for inclusion in the budget and then removed the budget. But I am very proud of that rate. Even though my party is in the minority, I still feel like it's very important to work in a bipartisan way and reach consensus where we can and find solutions where we can. I'm very solutions-oriented, not looking to get a lot of attention. I'm looking to find areas where we can actually improve people's lives, and in particular, those people that often don't have a voice at the State House. So I'm particularly proud this last session of the passage of the New Hampshire Momnibus. I feel like my whole career was really leading up to the passage of this bill. It was a package of legislation to support new moms and babies, in maternal health in particular. We know this is a big issue in New Hampshire, not only because of the health implications of being a new mom, but we also know that many younger women, ages 25 to 35, left the workforce during the pandemic, and we're having trouble getting them back. You may have seen that in your own workforce in the city. So there's a lot we need to do to support women to get back into the workforce, and I believe that the Momnibus was a piece of that. Another piece that I think is important to that same issue is access to affordable and quality childcare. We did pass the Child Care for New Hampshire Working Families Act that resulted in a substantial and historic investment in childcare in New Hampshire. This is an issue that we hear from families is a problem, and also from our businesses. Our businesses are telling us that their employees aren't able to stay in the workforce because they don't have access to quality and affordable childcare. Some other things that I wanted to mention, so those are my bills. I'm happy to answer any questions. I also wanted to give you all an update about the state budget. So as you may know, the legislature conducts work on the state budget every 2 years, so we just passed a budget. Again, I want to emphasize that this year it really was a bipartisan budget, meaning not everyone got what they wanted. It's not a perfect budget, but it was a budget that I was able to support, and all of my colleagues were able to support. It had a unanimous vote out of the Senate, which is very, I believe, rare. And I think it was a result of divided government. Even though in the Senate we are not evenly divided, the House is exactly evenly divided now. And I think we all benefited from that. I think the residents of New Hampshire benefited from it because everyone was at the table trying to find solutions that we could all, that could help people. So just some highlights from the budget. We took another look at the education funding formula. Again, I don't think this is the end-all, be-all. I think there's a lot of tweaks that need to happen with ongoing litigation, which I'm sure you're aware of. But we did send $169 million more for public education. We reconfigured the education funding formula. We also made record investment in housing. Of course, this is an issue I know that the city deals with, struggles with, looking for solutions for. It's also an issue we're hearing from our young folks is a real problem, access to affordable health care. So in this budget, we invested $50 million into housing production, $35 million of that into affordable housing, $10 million to fight homelessness, and $5 million into a new Housing Champions program that is available for municipalities, which we're hoping to grow. We did a lot of work in the budget to improve health for Granite Staters. We increased Medicaid rates dramatically. We extended Medicaid expansion 7 additional years. So that will mean that 60,000 low-income adults will retain their health insurance. That was an incredibly important thing that we were able to accomplish. I wish it had been permanent, but we do what we can. We also did some things for retirement, not everything that we wanted. Frankly, this was one of the biggest sticking points, the retirement solutions. But we were able to eliminate the retirement penalty for teachers and other public employees that was occurring at the date of their retirement. I want you all to know that I completely understand the challenges that municipalities do face when they are addressing retirement, and that is something that, in particular, my caucus is really committed to addressing. So the other thing that we did was we implemented a state employee raise by 12% over the biennium. This was for our state employees who hadn't had a raise in a very long time. We had lots of shortages in state government, which maybe you had felt the impact of. We sent $20 million to communities, including $10 million for road repair, $10 million for bridge repair, which we hope will relieve some property tax burden. There are some things that I didn't love about the budget, and I'm happy to share some of those. In particular, the budget sped up the repeal of the interest and dividends tax, which is going to result in a budget hole when we do our budget next go around, and I think that's going to be a real problem. So I'm happy to stop there. You know, what I would like you to take away is that I really would like to hear from you as issues do arise in the city. You are my eyes and ears for your community, of course. You're closer to the community, and you know, I don't know what I don't know, and so I would really love to hear from you anytime, so please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I really appreciate the fact that you've come. You think you're one of the first senators ever asked to do this, so thank you very much, and
My pleasure.
appreciate that. Appreciate the update of kind of what happened last year, but I'm really interested in what's going forward this year.
Yeah.
What bills do you consider sponsoring? What do you think the major topics will be? What should the city of Concord be looking out for during the next session and basically an off-budget year? And what kind of election cycle stuff should we watch to be for fun?
Yeah, so looking at the revenues coming in, it is very likely that we will have a substantial surplus, which means additional dollars. And I think this is very important for all communities to take advantage of, because there will not be that type of surplus, I believe, in the next budget cycle. We are going to see some substantial holes based on some of the tax policy that's been passed in recent years. So this coming year, there will be a surplus, so you will see some sort of what we call a Christmas tree bill, which, you know, State House folks are aware of. That's that bill where policy gets attached to that includes some dollars. So if there are needs, this is the time to ask for them. Other issues, of course, we'll be continuing to look at childcare and housing. Again, these are the top issues that we're hearing from families and from communities and from businesses that are major barriers. So those are the biggest issues that I sort of are coming to mind right now. And I will continue to think about those things that I might be missing.
Did you introduce any legislation this year?
Yes, so we are in the middle of our filing period.
2 days left.
What's that?
You're almost done, though.
We are done. Thursday is our last day. I typically introduce, you know, anywhere from 10 to 20 bills. One bill that you might be interested in is related to preschool. New Hampshire is only one of 6 states that does not have any state-funded preschool. Of course, you know, we just got kindergarten. And so there's a lot of research that has shown us for nearly 50 years about the impact and importance of early childhood, early care and education. And so there's a lot we can do both to support our kiddos and future outcomes and to support our working families by getting preschool up and running. So I'm hoping for a bipartisan solution on that.
Anybody else? Bless you, any chance you could share any new information or any information at all about the status of the garage and kind of where are you at?
Yeah.
I keep hearing different things.
I don't have any information on that, but I'm happy to find some and get back to you.
That's all right, it's fine. I've heard too many different,
Yeah, and I'm happy to check in, and I will absolutely get back to you on that.
I'll tell you what, how about this? You asked what we want, here you go, here's a want. When you put the garage in, obviously, they're moving out the week of the 23rd, I think, of October. And so, what's gonna happen to the parking after the 23rd when they move, that week of the 23rd when they move out? Is there any chance we could free up some space for some of our city employees to park there during the day? I can imagine that there'll be some people in the State House who'll be looking for parking as well, but if there's any other free spaces, we would love you to be a good neighbor and remember your friends on this side of Green Street. Because we struggle with a lot of employees park in neighborhoods and such, and it can be real difficult. And if they could park across the street, that would be really helpful. The second thing is when you go forth with the garage, the legislature's probably going to use it, primarily use it 6 months of the year, probably, the 3 days a week primarily. If there's an opportunity where we could partner with you for usage, that would be, I think, take a lot of pressure off our neighborhoods and take a lot of pressure off some of our city employees as well. So just some thoughts for you to consider when you
Thank
talk
you for
about
that.
the garage. Anybody have any?
Thank you very much for coming. It's good to see you. You mentioned the Christmas tree bill or potentially coming up. One thing that I would suggest that would be helpful to the city to consider as part of that is some additional funding from the state to support the city's efforts to deal with the homelessness issue. As you know, we now know sort of what the numbers are for the county, and I would hazard a guess that we have the vast majority of those individuals here in the city, and so there's significant costs associated with addressing that, both from a public safety standpoint and delivering services. So I think it would be very helpful if the state would consider kicking in some additional money so that we can continue to do what we can with what we have, but recognize that since we host a state prison and a mental hospital and a variety of other things, we tend to become a bit of a magnet for people dealing with homelessness.
One thing you may want to consider around that, I've talked to HHS about this, but if you had any insight, it would be real helpful. So when you all did the budget this year and you appropriated the money and you were coming up with the numbers for how to appropriate the money, you used the count that's the point in time count in January, which I think is actually formulated by the feds. Yeah. So I think there are other ways to do the count, because when we did the count in January, the number came back. The number came back like 100 and some odd homeless folks in the community at that time, when the number's actually well over 400. And so when you start looking at the appropriation of those dollars, cities obviously see most of the biggest burden, but there's this huge gap between that one day moment in time in January versus what the real number is. So if we could encourage the state to use some other formula to actually get a much better realistic count, so that when they hand out those appropriations, they're a little more realistic about where the money goes.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for coming out. I just wanted to add my support of the pre-K pilot program. I have a daughter that works for CAP, and I hear the stories firsthand. And the reach of that program goes far beyond just education, and the resources that I know she provides to her little ones and their families is significant. And particularly, she works in Concord, and she works with a lot of new Americans, and they need a lot of assistance that go beyond the education. But she's often asked questions that are beyond the kind of the scope of what she does, but it's a huge resource for them.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Senator. It's really great to see you here. We hope to see you again. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to communicate with us. I just wanted to point out we're fortunate in Pennacook that the excuse me, the Central Boys Club, World Schools Hub of Central New Hampshire is taking over the Pennacook Community Center in terms of childcare, so we're not losing that local option. So in terms of the bill that was just passed, what do you expect the outcome of that will be, or what is the hope of the results from
Yep.
that bill?
So the child care bill was a more comprehensive solution because we know you can't solve the issue by just addressing one aspect of it. So one of the biggest aspects of the child care crisis is that we don't have enough slots. And we don't have enough slots because we don't have enough staff. Because folks in the child care workforce, unfortunately, are some of our lowest paid workers. They're competing child care facilities, providers, even though they're taking care of our children, and I believe that they're educators as well, they don't make a lot of money. It's a problem. And so we allocated $15 million to address the workforce issue right now. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's a piece of it. And then the other piece that is really important is that we addressed affordability, because even though there's so much the workforce doesn't get paid a lot, it's still very expensive. Folks who have young children know that, oftentimes you're spending a lot of your budget on childcare. And so we did a lot to expand eligibility for the Child Care Scholarship Program. So this is a benefit that's a federal state program. So it's basically like a subsidy. If you have an income threshold, you can get scholarship to have your child attend preschool and childcare. And so we expanded eligibility for those who are eligible for those scholarships, so more people can both get into the program, and then we lowered co-pays for families. So we are attempting to address both the workforce shortage and the affordability crisis.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you again for coming and sharing with us.
My
Really
pleasure.
appreciate it. I think it was good for all of us. And I know I can speak with absolute certainty as I watch you at the State House that of the 59,000 so people you represent, that we are in Concord your favorite, and I appreciate that. You don't have to tell me. I know it. It's okay. And I really, but seriously, I really do appreciate the hard work that you put in. You are by far one of the most dedicated senators over there, and we know that we're very well represented. So thank you for all your efforts.
I appreciate that. I'm very lucky to represent this community.
Because we're your favorite, right?
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. All right. Takes us to our consent agenda. The manager and clerk have told me that nothing has been removed. Is that true? Okay. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Or is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Thank you very much. Takes us to our public hearings this evening. Madam Clerk, item 38, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $820,000 in the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant renovations project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $820,000 for this purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, as you recall, we discussed last month, the lower bearing on the screw pump A is scheduled for replacement as part of the concrete repair project scheduled in the fiscal year 25 capital improvement program budget for the Hall Street plant. To minimize a risk of sewer overflow in the city, department recommends that the replacement of the screw pump A bearing occur immediately. We have to move it up because it's not going to last as long as we thought. It's anticipated that the review of the fiscal year 25 concrete project will provide some reduction in future project costs at the plant. So we're recommending the approval of these dollars.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the manager? All righty. We'll open the public hearing on this item. Anybody wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 30B, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $750,000 for the sewer pump station improvements project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $750,000 for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, so we'll stay with sewer. The fiscal year, unfortunately, fiscal year 23 capital budget appropriate $160,000 in project number 648 to complete a study of the sewer collection system in the Loudon Road, Manchester Street sewer shed. Specifically, the study reviewed the condition of the capacity to Steeplegate Mall pump station, as well as sewer mains serving the Heights area. The study was completed in fiscal year '23. The master plan recommends upgrades to Steeplegate Mall pump station, as well as improvements to certain segments of the sewer collection system throughout the Heights. Subject to final design, said improvements are presently estimated to cost $26.6 million and have been incorporated in the city's current capital improvement program for fiscal years '24, '25, and '26. The issues identified in the Heights Sewer Master Plan, coupled with increased demand for sewer service associated with forthcoming development projects, underscores the need for the city to proceed expeditiously and efficiently with necessary improvements to avoid potential public health concerns, as well as support continued tax-based growth in the community. So the ask is, one, rescind, and you'll see this throughout the whole meeting, reauthorize $1.9 million of sewer fund supported bonds previously appropriated in fiscal year '24, appropriate $1,150,000 in sewer support bonds and notes for CIP 91 for the design and permitting of the sewer main and the piping improvements, and appropriate the sum of $750,000 in sewer support bonds and notes for CIP for design permitting improvements for the pump station. It is important to note that this course of action has no new fiscal impact on the community or the sewer fund. Additionally, if the recommendation is approved, the $750,000 currently carried in CIP 275 in the fiscal year '25 CIP will be removed during your next budget process. Glad to answer any questions.
Thanks. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Anybody wishing to testify? Mr. Swiker. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, mayors, members of the city council, city manager, and city clerk. I'm Roy Schweiker, and I'd like to extend my comments to include the related item. It's a couple more now, so you don't have to listen to me twice. Is that okay? And this appropriation brings up two things that I think we need to be thinking about. And the first thing is, you may or may not be aware, there are people in the legislature that are trying to say, well, we need more housing, so the way to do it is just automatically say that anywhere that has water and sewer, you can have 4 times as many units. And, you know, to me, that's ridiculous. I mean, I'm an engineer. If you design the system properly, you can't suddenly come in and put down, you know, 4 times as many units and have it work. And I think we're starting to see that here, that we're having to spend $26 million to, you know, have additional capacity there because it, you know, maybe wasn't designed for the level of development that we're likely to see. So I think we need to push back on these people that, you know, want to pass these far-reaching, you know, bills on this. You know, no, you can't tell people I've got to allow 4 times as many units if you don't have the capacity. And so, you know, first, that's half it. The other half of it is, I think the wrong people are paying for this. This is being billed to the sewer fund. So essentially what that means is existing sewer users are, you know, paying for this expansion. And my feeling is we should let the additional users that want to use the sewer pay for the expansion. We've got enough now, but if they want it bigger, they should be paying for it and not billing it on the poor folks that are already using the sewer system. And, you know, once again, this is a philosophy that's changed in the time I've been in Concord. I remember when, you know, they were building things like Walmart, and Walmart had to have a traffic light to have Walmart there, so they had to pay for it out of their money. Whereas now we have the idea, oh no, the taxpayers should pay for all these improvements out of TIF districts so the developers can make more money. And I think that's wrong. I think the developers, you know, should not be billing the current residents for, you know, their additional profits. So that's why I think that, once again, we need to repurpose this stuff so that the expansions of the sewer system should be billed to the people who are using the expanded capacity. The same thing with the water system and so forth. Instead of telling all the current sewer users, oh no, we need more profits for developers, so we can't make them pay for it, you got to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Swiker? Seeing none, appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 30C, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $235,000 to include $140,000 to the golf fund, $70,000 to the arena fund, and $25,000 to the water fund for fiscal year 2023 retroactive to June 30th, 2023.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, you have a full report. I'll just touch on a couple of the overview pieces here. So in regards to the golf fund, the preliminary results for the golf fund, as we're looking at them today, are a gain of $170,500 in revenues received more than expenditures. So that's a very positive result compared to, as you know, when we did the budget, we were looking at maybe $1,600 in a gain. Instead of being $1,600, it's going to be $170,500. And essentially what that is, the preliminary results for the revenues exceed budget by about $300,000, while preliminary results for expenses exceed budget by about $134,000. And that's, so supplemental request is for the $140,000, which is more than covered by the additional revenues. Using that same approach, the arena fund, the preliminary results for the arena were a loss of $13,000. So you budgeted for a $22,600 loss. So again, that is performing better than expected. And for the water fund, you had budgeted for a budgeted loss of $479,500, and it looks like it's going to be $307,900. So to make all these things work from a budgetary standpoint, these are the three recommendations that are in front of you. Again, all the revenues far exceed the expenditures.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone who, I apologize, I didn't see
Oh,
your
sorry,
hands.
I was, actually, maybe this is better during the action phase. Just
I mean, if it's a question, the manager has to.
It's a question probably for Deputy City Manager LeBrun. I would
Sure.
think. It has to do with, I just was wondering why the wages and benefits were $33,000. Is that over what the budget had, I think, accommodated a higher wages and benefits when we approved it in June? I'm wondering, is this higher than that?
So you think about this, this is really what was approved, not this June, but the previous June. This is for last fiscal year.
Okay.
So because of that, during the course of the fiscal year, because of the extra business and everything that was going on, we had additional wages that were paid out.
Does this match what we approved this past June for 2024?
Without looking at the exact number, every year it's a little bit different. We try to do our best to project what we think is going to happen during the next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, at this time, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Is there anybody wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 30D, please.
It is a resolution appropriating the sum of $42,716.12 for Police Department roadway safety and outreach initiatives, and accepting the sum of $42,716.12 in grant funds from the New Hampshire Highway Safety Agency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Madam members of the council, the department desires to continue its efforts in making the city's roads as safe as possible. An important aspect of this is conduct road safety enhanced enforcement initiatives and community outreach. It is recommended City Council authorize the police department to accept and appropriate these dollars.
Thank you much. Is there any questions? Seeing none, this time we'll open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to testify on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 30E, please.
It's a resolution rescinding the appropriation of $1,900,000 and deauthorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $1,900,000 for the sewer main rehabilitation and construction project, and appropriating the sum of $1,150,000 for the sewer main rehabilitation and construction project, and authorizing the issuance of notes in the sum of $1,150,000 for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
And members of the council, I covered this in the earlier item.
And you did it well. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Anybody wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll close it. And Madam Clerk, item 30F, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $38,390 for conducting illegal drug-related investigations, and accepting the sum of $38,390 in grant funding from the New Hampshire Department of Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Nothing to add, Your Honor.
Well said. Anybody else? Any questions? Seeing none. Anybody like to testify on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, I believe it's the last one, 30G, please.
It is a resolution appropriating the sum of $505,000 for police department retention payments and overtime and increasing the amount to raise in taxes in the amount of $505,000 in the general fund.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, the Concord Police Department is looking to establish a temporary police officer retention program, the stopgap measure to future employee loss. This retention program will aim to reward our current sworn officers who have taken on drastically increased workload and patrol work hours during staffing crisis. The retention program is designed to slow the turnover rate, which will allow the department time to recover from its current staffing crisis. The compensation recommendations found in the resolution, which you have in front of you, has been out for the public, will not be applicable to the chief or the deputy chiefs of police, and the resolution will be reassessed after 90 days and will sunset after the staffing crisis has subsided. We'll keep you up to date on a regular basis if you approve this.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for the manager? Yes. Ms. Keach.
Thank you, Ron. Just wanted to clarify. So this will be reassessed every 90 days, or it'll sunset automatically? Is that, do I understand that correct?
That's, well, maybe have the chief come up and. Because in reality, this is going to cross over likely, because 90 days is not going to do, we believe is going to do it, so this will likely cross over into the next fiscal year, which again, you'd have another appropriation look at that if you decide to move forward.
I think the question about the 90 days has to, applies to the overtime rate.
Yes.
We would reassess that after 90 days, whether or not we needed to continue that or not.
And to be clear, that would come before council at the end of 90 days?
I think that, well, whatever's budgeted, we would try to stick within that budget, and if we couldn't do that, we would certainly review that with the city manager.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it. This time, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Anybody wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Takes us to our action phase. Madam Clerk, item 31, please.
A resolution appropriating the sum of $820,000 in the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant renovations project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $820,000 for this purpose.
Approval.
Motion made, second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have received necessary two-thirds. The motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 32, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $750,000 for the sewer pump station improvements project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $750,000 for this purpose.
Second. Motion made, second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Have received necessary two-thirds. The motion is adopted. Let's give it a little more oomph on that two-thirds, please. Item 33, please.
A resolution appropriating the sum of $235,000 to include $140,000 to the golf fund, $70,000 to the arena fund, and $25,000 to the water fund for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Motion made, second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it, have received the necessary two-thirds, motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 34, please.
A resolution appropriating the sum of $42,716.12 for Police Department roadway safety and outreach initiatives and accepting the sum of $42,716.12 in grant funds from the New Hampshire Highway Safety Agency.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and second to approve this item. Is there any discussion?
Your Honor,
Council
I'm
Brown?
recusing myself from this item
Because?
because my husband is a police officer.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have received necessary two-thirds, motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 35, please.
It is a resolution rescinding the appropriation of $1,900,000 and deauthorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $1,900,000 for the sewer main rehabilitation and construction project, appropriating the sum of $1,150,000 for the sewer main rehabilitation and construction project, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $1,150,000.
Move approval.
Motion made and second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All Opposed? Have received necessary two-thirds. The motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 36, please.
A resolution appropriating the sum of $38,390 for conducting illegal drug-related investigations and accepting the sum of $38,390 in grant funding from the New Hampshire Department of Safety.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion?
Your Honor, I am recusing myself from this item because my husband is a police officer.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have received necessary two-thirds. The motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 37, please.
It is a resolution appropriating the sum of $505,000 for police department retention payments and overtime and increasing the amount to raise in taxes in the amount of $505,000 in the general fund.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this. Is there any discussion? We'll start over here and work away. Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this resolution, but I'd like to make an amendment that we also direct the Concord Police Department to come back with a report in 6 months of the types of service calls and recommendations and considerations should we not be able to recruit and retain the police staffing we have currently. I know that we had this discussion a couple of years ago where we also increased pay and had conversations about the need to recruit and retain high-quality officers, and this is not a problem that we are going to be able to outbid ourselves in the long run, so I think we would do best for the public safety in Concord to start to have those conversations now and generate report and recommendations should that become a necessity, so that we don't have to just stop providing the services that we'd like to see in public safety. The second part of that is I would love for the city to have a stronger voice in retirement issues at the state level, since that is one of the pieces that is driving the loss of the ability to recruit officers to police departments. Thank you.
Okay. The second part, not an amendment, that's just a comment. The first part about the 6 months report, how about we make it simple and say, and in preparation for the next budget, that the police department give an update on the outcome and effects of, or do you want something more specific?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think what I'm actually looking for is less how this particular allocation is working, because I think we'll get that information already. It is what are functions of our police department that we could be looking at alternative ways within the police department to fulfill those. So like the social worker position that we've created, it seems like, and from the research and conversations I've had, that part of the reason that we're having police staffing crisis, not just in Concord, but really across the state and nationally, is that police officers come to this work for a certain type of role that they're looking to fulfill. And the challenges we face around the opioid crisis, the unhoused population and the needs there, and the mental work that our police officers are putting into each day, not necessarily always having all of the training and support they need for those types of responsibilities that they have had put upon them. And so I would love for our Concord Police Department to look at what are other communities doing to rethink how our public safety roles are recruited for the types of job duties and responsibilities we have, so that we can continue to have a robust public safety job here.
I'm going to second that.
Your Honor?
Yeah.
I would like to second, but I'm still fuzzy on what you're asking for, Counselor.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's fine. So you're basically, I don't know why you're waiting as long as you are. Why don't you say at the beginning of the year, when I'm gone, come back with a report from the police department, have a conversation about what are all other alternatives for recruitment, retention, for policing. I mean, isn't that what you're looking for?
Yes and no. I think it's not necessarily even the retention and recruitment. It is like what the actual job responsibilities are. Like, could we delineate more the types of positions we're hiring for and what those backgrounds require? So again, like the social work position, that is going to be added to the police department to fulfill a very specific role and take pressure off of other officers. I think that we're seeing in other communities there's more of that type of activity going on, and it seems like our department is interested in moving in that direction already. So it would be good to have all those options listed out in a report. And I said 6 months just because I think we're coming up on winter, we're gonna have a busy season. I also note some of this could be done through the Public Safety Advisory Board, but we haven't met in over a year at this point.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and vote against this motion. I'll say that in terms of the type of training that our police officers get and actually contribute to, they are also putting on trainings because they are experts in the field. There's no additional training that they don't need, that they wouldn't come to us otherwise to ask for. And I think in a time when we have so few officers as a result of vacancies, I don't think now is the time to be putting additional work on their plates. So I'll be voting against this motion.
Anyone else? Council Pierce?
I thought I had it, but are you suggesting that whether it be in 6 months or some time to be determined, that we, the council, look at the types of jobs that the police officers are doing and make recommendations from there?
Thank you for the question. I would rather have the police chief and his deputies work on that as the experts in the field and provide those recommendations, look at what other communities are doing, things that they've already discussed internally. We heard, with the social worker position and others, they are interested in exploring things like this. I also think that if we cannot recruit and retain the officers we need, the alternative report we're going to get is what types of services are no longer going to be provided in Concord. And I don't want to wait until we get to that point. I think for the public safety of our community, let's look at, if we're not recruiting officers, what are the barriers there? Why aren't people interested in these jobs, or why aren't they interested in these jobs in Concord? And can we switch up some of the job responsibilities so that folks have more specific, detailed job responsibilities that are more comfortable to them, so that they're more encouraged to come to those positions?
Just a quick follow-up. When you say we, are you meaning the police chief
I
and
do,
staff?
yes,
Okay.
thank you. We, the Royal Concord, we,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Manager, is it correct to say in the upcoming budget cycle, when we look at staffing, that you'll be making recommendations to fill needed vacancies in the police department based upon input from the chief and the department and what's best for the community?
What we look at, I'll just give you 2 examples. I mean, there's a reason why the city of Concord led this half of the country in the Comfort Dog proposal. I think we were the first ones on this side of the Mississippi to do that. That came out of the police department looking at now I think every department in the state has one, and probably in the side of the country has one. And of course, the police department brought forward the idea, where we've been talking about it for a year, for the 2 social worker positions, and to grow that into a division. So we do that naturally as part of the budget development process, and we look at the staffing levels that we have. I think what we could do is look at it from the standpoint, if we get to the point where we believe we're going to have to downsize the department or change what is being done in the department because of staffing levels, we'd bring that to you naturally as part of the process and say, here's what we're looking at, here's some options for you to consider. I mean, but that's part and parcel of what we do every year as part of the budget. So I wouldn't see anything different. And of course, we've talked to you about we would like to have the police department go through the state accreditation system, which is out there. We'd love to do the national accreditation system, but with the police station that we have now, we know that's not possible. So if that was to change, and we were to actually have a police station that we could potentially meet national accreditation, we would certainly go for that. And that would lead us to all kinds of series of changes in not only policy, but the way we approach things. So I think you're going to see the ever-evolving police department, as you see with, you did the same thing with the fire department when we went to the 4th ambulance and the services they provide. It's just a natural progression of government.
Anyone else?
Thank you. And I think what the city manager just said is exactly why I would like to have us move forward with this report request now. I don't want to wait until we are in a staffing crisis again to have those options thought out and listed, while we have opportunity with the allocation in front of us to hopefully get back up to full staffing and have the opportunity and the luxury of time to look at what those options might be, rather than operate from a scarcity model and ask the police chief and his team to do that when we are already at a critically low staffing. So for me, it's more of a preventive measure and being more proactive and having those options laid out for us as a community.
So the reason I second is because I thought we were doing it anyway, but then I got completely confused by what conversation. Go ahead.
Thank you. That's all I was going to say was something to what you just said, which is, I think what I struggle with is you're trying to codify or formalize something that we're already doing, and it's creating some ambiguity to suggest that we're not doing exactly what you want. And having said that, it sounds confusing even in my own head. I believe what we're doing today and what the manager explained is exactly what you're looking for. If what you're looking for is a formal report in a certain period of time, we're going to get that in the budget process, and I don't think it's necessary. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, go ahead. That way. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
You raised your hand.
I was pointing. I appreciate it. Thank you, Councilor Keach. You're welcome. I guess my question, and I'm not a member of the Public Safety Commission, but it seems to me that this is the type of conversation that should happen there and get that feedback, and then the Public Safety Committee can come back to the full council with more information.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, we have a motion before us.
Excuse me, Your Honor, I would like to recuse myself from this item because my husband is a police officer.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Everybody understand what the motion is? No?
We're voting on the amendment first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody good with that? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay, motion fails. We have the motion before us, original motion before us. Anybody like to speak to that? Okay, I will. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to say thank you to the manager and for the chief for bringing this forward. I share some of, I think, the concerns moving forward to make sure that we can continue to attract and retain officers. And so while I appreciate sort of the effort to do this as a stopgap measure, I do want to have additional feedback as part of not only the budget process, but through the Public Safety Committee about whether or not we need to look at other things just besides money to make sure that people want to work here and work at our department. So thank you for bringing it forward. I'm happy to support it, but I think this is an ongoing conversation that we need to continue to engage in.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you. I would second what Councilor Fennessy said. You know, I think that the reason I did not vote for the amendment, the proposed amendment, was because I really think there should be an ongoing process. I know that the chief has come to us with concerns. The chief has come to us with proposals for redress. And I would love to see public safety continue to look at these issues because they're not going to go away, and they're just not local to Concord. They're issues that we're dealing with every day. And they have an impact on all the law enforcement challenges that we have, not only you know, with the opioid epidemic, but also with homelessness, also with domestic abuse, and so on and so forth. I was very pleased, obviously, during the budget cycle to see the proposal for the in-house police social worker position and then the added position, and the potential for bringing interns in to bulk up that department and do more robust work in that area. And that speaks to me of the inclination towards innovation of our chief and our department, which I hope to see continue.
Thank you. Anyone else on the ballot want to speak? Oh, all right.
Thank you. I just want to make sure the second portion of my request. So we know that the retirement issues at the state level has been part of what's contributed to this problem, both Concord and statewide. So I would love to know what the city of Concord has done as part of those discussions. Have we weighed in? And specifically thinking about the changes that were made about a decade ago and the concerns that it would hurt with recruitment and retention at that time, that I think we've started to see the unfortunate fallout from that.
That's you.
No, the city council has not directed staff in any way to take a political position on these items.
Okay.
I was just going to repeat the same thing I've been saying. I'm recusing myself from this item.
So you still work there? Chief, does her husband still have a job? Okay, good, you still can recuse yourself. All right, well, anyone else? Okay, my turn, because the magic number is 82. I got 82 days left here, so there you go. You have to listen to me for 82 more days. This is a really, really important item. Anybody here listening, anybody at home listening, this is probably one of the most important things we've done in a long time. When you think about what the responsibility of state government is, one of the things that is key is public safety, is making sure that our residents live in a safe, welcoming community. And this, what the men and women do for our police department, they are critical to ensuring that safety in our community. We talk about wanting to be more tourism, more visitors. All these things, bringing more people in our community, more challenges, are just the same challenges our police department has. We have an opportunity, we have an obligation to support the folks who work for our community. And if you out there listening to folks, which I know you are right now, except for Earl and I and Candace, but yeah, I said your first name, so sorry, counselors.
It's okay,
You know,
Jim.
crime, these things are what directly impacts our quality of life. This is but a Band-Aid solution to a very systemic problem. You're right. Retirement is a huge part of that. There's no question what happens in that Gold Dome has a direct impact of who wants to be a police officer or not. The challenge is just simply of what people deal with, and why would you want to be a police officer today? But I can tell you we have one of the best, if not the best, I'm going to go as far as say we are the best in the state of our police department. And I think the people who work for us are incredible and wonderfully talented individuals. But we have to show our support to those individuals as they support us as in our community. This is something which we are going to have to revisit as a community all next year. I think, Councilor Rice-Hawkins, I understand where you come from, and we have an obligation to look at all the things that we need to do and maybe think differently in certain ways. One thing I hope you will not do during the next budget cycle is reduce the expectations that the community has from our public safety. We have incredible, when we call, our department responds, and that is an expectation we have. I hope that you do not reduce that expectation, and I know that's challenging. So this is but a small commitment that I think we're making to the department. We have to continue with that commitment, and I hope next June you do exactly that and continue to make sure that we can get the best and the brightest in our department. So I strongly urge you to support this, and I thank you for doing so ahead of time. Anybody else? You ready for the vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Have received necessary 2/3, the motion is adopted. Okay. Aren't you glad there's only 82 more days? Okay, we are at reports. We have a presentation by the police department specific to community-wide efforts regarding homeless activities within the city of Concord. It doesn't say it on the item of the agenda, but I'm going to ask the Coalition to End Homelessness as well as the task force, the city task force, to come up and join and present together.
I have a PowerPoint.
Awesome. Then that's why he got promoted to community development director, because he's our IT guy as well.
I just thought sometimes it's easier to.
So once you sit down and relax, and he's going to fire that up while you think.
Your Honor, just for the record.
We didn't know in advance.
Just for the record, as you know, I'm here in my capacity as chairman of the steering committee on the city's plan to end homelessness.
So you're the problem.
I am the problem.
All right. How long is it going to take you to do that?
2 minutes.
All right. Let's just everybody relax, take a 2-minute recess, so that way you can just get it done. Thanks, everyone.
It's okay.
Just be careful backing up.
I'll be back.
Yes.
Yes, no, I just want to jump in. Yeah, I think for me, it's clear. Coming. And it's going to be.
That's why I feel, actually, I took
Much more than in the past.
It should pop right up. I did one here not that long ago. You know, on thumb drive.
gave everybody the ability to have a bio.
Want me to use my Matt? Matt, I can just log in myself if you want.
I'll just use mine, it's fine. The one I can't get rid of.
Because you know it's going to.
I think it is going to be fascinating to watch because
It's gonna be.
the question, I don't, no.
Sometimes it's easier for people to read.
Maybe we should switch places.
Rather than stare at each other and maintain the information.
Yes.
Okay.
I met with him today.
Yeah, that I do. Go through this kind of quickly, which is what.
You get a freaking neck over there watching it. Oh, yeah. Too much. I don't know the expression. Okay, so who's got it? All right.
Interagency communications and collaborations, three things that we've been working hard on. The outreach with the business. No, I don't either.
Okay, so, musical chairs don't mean, okay. All right, who'd like to start off? Well,
Hi, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Karen Jansen, the Executive Director of the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness, and the coalition staffs the.
just pull your microphone closer.
It won't come forward. Okay.
You broke it now.
I broke it. It didn't slide. Okay. And the coalition is the staff to the City of Concord Steering Committee to End Homelessness. So I wanted to talk to you and give a brief presentation that we did at the September steering committee meeting about what has been going on with capital area street outreach. So in what we have for street outreach workers in our area is the Community Action Program of Belknap Merrimack County. They have one street outreach worker and they're getting ready to hire 3 more. The Concord Coalition, we have 1 street outreach worker. Waypoint, based in Concord, has 2 street outreach workers, and they primarily focus on youth, age 18 to 25. Easter Seals has 1 street outreach worker that the focus is on veterans. That's a statewide position. Harbor Care also focuses on veterans, 1 street outreach worker. That's also statewide. And then Veterans Affairs, there's 1 street outreach worker. They have 1 social worker that will go on outreach with them, and they also have 1 registered nurse that will go out. In June, we convened everybody who is doing street outreach in the greater Concord area, and we kind of talked about what our focus is, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, what we want to work on improving. So street outreach, it's basically a lot of work about wellness checks, distribution of supplies. That can be sleeping bags, that can be socks, that can be sunscreen, it could be water in the summertime, it could be maybe even some medical supplies. They focus on getting people referred to services, and whether that's mental health services, substance use disorder services, or coming into the Coalition's Resource Center. Another major focus is data collection. I think earlier in this meeting you had talked about the numbers and how do we get all those numbers that we have for Merrimack County who are people who are experiencing homelessness. There's a national system called HMIS, or the Homeless Management Information System, that everybody across the country eventually will start logging, entering people's names into this. And there's another component of that called coordinated entry, and that is how individuals who are experiencing homelessness, if they are assessed with coordinated entry, enrolls them in a program for them to get specialized vouchers for rental assistance vouchers. And then we also talked about case management, and with the end result of that is trying to get people housed. And then we do a lot of responding to crisis in street outreach with overdoses, mental health. Sometimes we're missing people that we need to go and find. With them, that's where Concord PD comes in we work very closely with them. So as we went through this list, we said, you know, we do wellness checks really well, we do distribution of supplies really well, we respond to crises really well. We can do better in data collection, but we're doing pretty good in that. And we're doing good on referring to services, but we're not doing real well on case management and getting people into services. So that's been a huge focus this entire summer. The other agencies that all the street outreach workers in this area collaborate with are the Friendly Kitchen, Concord Police Department, Concord Hospital, Riverbend's Emergency Services, Concord General Services, Department of Transportation, Merrimack County Department of Corrections, Railroad Security, and the State Police. We all rely on each other to work on helping our individuals in this community who are unhoused and keeping them safe and getting them into services. We know that there are a total number of about 448 individuals who are unhoused. They're not all unsheltered, but they don't have permanent housing. And these are numbers for Merrimack County. And these numbers have been holding steady since about April with the data that we have been able to collect and been tracking. The total number of people who have been homeless for over a year are about 294. These are county numbers. The majority of them actually are in the greater Concord area. And again, of these 294, they're not all unsheltered. There's people that are at McKenna House, there's people involved with Family Promise, there's people who are in the domestic violence system and they're in safe houses. These, the Friends program. Some are couch surfing, living with
cars.
Yep, there's people living in cars. We know that that has really kind of exploded since the emergency rapid assistance program ended in April and again for families in June.
Could I interject that?
Yeah.
That based on, I think the last figure I heard from Concord School District, at their chamber breakfast, 114 are children who are in the Concord school system.
So one of the things that brings us here today is about encampments and the feeling that, wow, we have a lot of encampments going on. We're seeing more. Maybe the number has increased. As I said, the number is staying pretty steady of the number, but it's becoming more visible. We've got a double-edged sword happening. So you take some place like the rail yard, and which is building this wonderful affordable housing. That's where a lot of camps were. Nobody saw people down there. We're clearing all that out. We're building housing. We're waiting for that housing to come up. We know we're going to have a lot of individuals who are homeless or actually have been accepted into that. But in the meantime, they're spreading people out. And so the thing is, we can't lose people. So every time an encampment gets broken up, people spread out and they go further to the outlying areas. And then the street outreach workers have a hard time locating them and making sure that they're engaged in services. So the one thing that we're asking for people is, if you see an encampment, if people can email to the CASOC at capbm.org. That stands for the Capital Area Street Outreach Collaborative. And and it goes to CAP, Belknap, Merrimack County, because CAP is the, they're the, if you call the 211, I just have a complete blank on what they are. The regional access point, sorry. When you call 211, they automatically funnels to CAP. People will, if you can email them, let them know where the location of the encampment is. They'll get an initial response. We will, the street outreach team, within the next business weeks, will get out to that site, see what's going on, and follow up with the people who reported with an email. It's really important to know, though, that anybody who's a street outreach worker are not going to break up encampments. Their role is to go in, make sure people are safe, get them referred to services, and get them on the path towards housing. The next thing that we've been working on this summer is what happens when an encampment does break up. And we have developed this protocol with the state where Mandy Reagan, who is the state path outreach worker, if the police department or any agency who has jurisdiction knows that they need to move some people along, we ask that they contact Mandy, and she will notify the area access point agency. And again, from our area, that would be CAP, Belknap, Merrimack County. And the information that we need is who is the agency conducting the clearing and what their contact information is, the date the property is going to be posted, the date the property is going to be cleared, and then Mandy will email the regional access point, which in this instance, she would just use that same CASOC email that we're asking the general public to do. I think we're also, in terms of reporting where encampments are, there have been conversations are starting with general services to be able to use the Click It app, and I don't know quite where the status of that is. Part of the reason reporting to the state is important is it allows us to collect another data point, and then we can, as a statewide system, see what's going on and where people are and where people are moving. When an encampment is going to be cleared, the street outreach teams go in pre-posting if possible. That's why it's important to know when people are going to post. They can go in and they can talk. They can find out who all the individuals are in that camp, and then they can help move them along. And then they're there during the posting. It helps to keep tempers down, and then again, they're there during the actual clearing. several times this summer when this is, when we followed this protocol, we've been able to get people to move very quietly off the property, pack up their things, and then we don't lose track of where they've ended up, so we can continue the case management services that we're providing. So that's kind of an overview of what's been going on this summer and how we've improved the system with street outreach. And I just wanted to throw this up here about the systems improvements that have been going on in Concord since the beginning of this year. So do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. Thanks, Karen. I was quoted in this morning's paper as saying something like, the system changes have been the most promising thing I've seen in 10 years of being on the steering committee. And the reason for this is that we have been talking about models for successfully reaching functional zero homelessness for some time. But all of that really hinges not only on having housing and having landlords who are willing to take people coming out of homelessness with supportive services into their properties, but also coordination of agencies. The steering committee meets on a quarterly basis, and we do that because we feel that the people around the table are working hard on addressing homelessness. And we don't want to eat up too much of their time with meetings. We want to meet at a time when we have something substantive to discuss. And the last meeting was extremely substantive. Data collection is bedrock here. Having a by-name census, which the coalition has been working on putting together of the homeless population in Concord, allows us to identify who is coming into homelessness in Concord and who is successfully exiting homelessness in Concord, or who is just leaving the area and no longer is part of the program for solution. Case conferencing is also critical, and by that we mean, and you can expand and correct, that the key agencies get together on a regular basis with a list of the homeless and with a prioritized list, and they identify individuals who they can move towards housing, towards being housed, and identify what each organization or agency can do to move them there. This is the model that has been used successfully around the country by other communities, and we've been working hard to get to that point. But it has been a challenge because of the various agencies, different priorities, different goals, and what other obstacles have there been?
Having the full information about the individual and what their true needs are. And so with all the agencies working together, and as we collect all this data and we're kind of doing this major case conferencing, we can sit here, we can look and we say, here's a housing opportunity, there's mental health services readily available, there's substance use disorder services readily available, or there's medical services really close by. We can really make a good fit for that individual of what they need in the housing opportunity they have, and make sure that all the supports that they need are right there for them, versus just taking someone and putting them in an apartment. So sometimes through this case conferencing, we've got people from 3 different agencies who've been working with one individual and will say, okay, your agency is actually better suited to provide all the supportive services for them. So this has been a real game changer in many ways.
And it's important to realize that we solve this problem individual by individual. There are, to my knowledge, there are no broad sweeping solutions here. You know, we have to move these, identify the issues with these individuals, address them, and then move them into housing, supported housing with wraparound services. So this interagency communications and collaborations is critical. I think it's important for us to remember, Karen may not talk about this, but it's important for us to remember that we had a 2-year period during the COVID pandemic when organizations like the Coalition were scrambling to try to figure out how to address this. The homeless, you know, the emergency winter shelter held 40 people in bunk beds. Well, you had to space people out. Consider, that was just one aspect of this. And so in many ways, I guess, as an outsider, I would say, addressing the homelessness, with a long-term perspective, was tabled for about 2 years. As COVID was dealt with, people were in hotels, federally funded, but then that funding ran out, had to identify how to keep those people from going into homelessness. These were major issues. So, but the fact that agencies are talking to each other and communicating is critical and key. The fact that the coalition is now talking to, for example, Concord Hospital and the county jail on releases, so that they can be there when somebody leaves one of these organizations or one of these agencies, institutions. The fact that they have negotiated last year extended hours with the Friendly Kitchen, so that the Friendly Kitchen could act as a warming center for the homeless. These are collaborations which you may not appear to be critical, but really are. About 2 years ago, I think, and the city manager can correct me if I'm wrong, as the chair of the steering committee, I asked him to ask the department, the Concord Police Department, to assign an officer, appoint an officer to the steering committee. We had great service from Deputy Chief Steve Smagula, and when roles changed, we received the services of Deputy Chief Brad Moulton. And I have to say that, I have seen, and I don't know to what degree that was part of it, but the cooperation between the CPD and the agencies working on homelessness, to my mind, is unprecedented, certainly in my experiences. Not because the department wasn't doing a good job, not because the department didn't care, but sometimes I think it's just having the right people around the table. And I saw that around the issue in the South End, when I think that Deputy Chief Moulton did an outstanding job of communication, bringing in the social service agencies, the coalition, CAP, and addressing it and fairly quickly. So kudos to them. The coalition is poised. I just received your newsletter today. The coalition is poised to house 36 people this year, as of October, correct? And right now, it seems as if as many people as are leaving are entering. So this is why we're having successes on this end, but on this end, we have more people coming in, which is why I think Karen says it's stable.
Yeah. We need more housing to come online.
Right. And willing landlords. I'd just like to highlight Dakota Partners and give them kudos for assigning in their almost 200-unit project down at the rail yards. They assigned 10 of those units for people coming out of homelessness, which have permanent housing vouchers assigned to them. So if somebody moves in there, is successfully rehabilitated, and then moves to another housing unit somewhere else, that unit is available with a voucher for somebody else coming out of homelessness. And that's the model we need. And now, I think we can pass it over to Chief Moulton, unless...
Go ahead. What do you got?
No, I mean, I think we've had a good working relationship here, and I think that, when problems do come up, it's really just kind of the communication piece. We have camps here. There's a few of them, and certainly this time of year, the foliage starts to come down. People start to see more of them, but they're out there all year, and they get moved around quite frequently. I don't think right now we have any what I would consider, at least on city land, any large encampments that in one area. They're kind of spread around, but when we do find them and have to address them, that's when we will try to partner up with both the outreach and Freeman, his group over at CAP. They're usually the first call that I'll make and have them go in and see if we can provide them services and get them moved before we even have to go down there. But I guess I'll open up to, if you guys have specific questions on stuff.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate all the information. Who has questions? Councilor Brown.
Sure. So I was just wondering, the steering committee meets quarterly. could that meet monthly? I mean, we have some committees that meet monthly, and just hearing that there's over 100 kids that are experiencing homelessness, and we have more people coming in, is this something that this committee could meet monthly so that there could be more involvement by the community? There could be more ideas, just getting the word out to the public more frequently with solutions, just sharing, the gains, the goals, and the challenges.
Well, Counselor, thanks for the question. I think we are getting the word out by virtue of this meeting and others. Communication is certainly one of our priorities that we've moved up. Could we meet more frequently? We have met more frequently. If we felt that there was a situation that warranted us meeting more regularly, more frequently rather, we certainly would. But right now, the quarterly meetings seem to fit the work patterns and fit the progression of the work that we're trying to accomplish.
So I'll answer the question. So Counselor, this steering committee that was established, came out of the task force that I established 13 years ago with its initial report. And the council had then adopted it and moved forward with a recommendation. We've appointed people to it. They serve. These are people who are mostly very high-level individuals. These are not the people on the ground meeting. So the conversations are meant to be, more collaborative amongst everyone. But the meetings, the things that you're talking about, I believe, in terms of affecting directly individuals' quality of life and getting them back into housing, out of the situations that they might be in, we don't want to burden those people. And you saw how few outreach workers we actually have. We don't need them to be going to meetings, in my opinion. We need them to be out there in the field doing their jobs. So the quarterly meetings that have worked appropriately throughout the years. It's the right number of people. It's the people who attend are excellent. They contribute to, I think, a lot of good ideas. You all are there, plus many others. So in terms of the number of meetings, I think they're actually happening, but they're happening amongst the people that need to be talking to each other. And that's one of the things that, Karen, I want to just sing your praises. I'm not going to stop you. The work you've been doing is just phenomenal. And since you've come on board, you've really been able to focus that collaborative effort. And I sit on the Governor's Housing Stability Group, and we push real hard. As Councilor Grady Sexton mentioned, the HMIS system wasn't actually taking a lot of information on individuals. We pushed them to actually include the information that is going back out to the CAP agencies. But what we were finding is the CAP agency was not actually providing the people on the ground with the information that they needed to actually help the individuals get out of the circumstance they were in. And because of the good work that Karen did, and quite frankly, I'm going to stick with the theme of Karen, our own theme of Karen at our Human Services, who is an absolute rock star. She worked with the state as well and the county, and because of those connections, because of those, not the steering meetings, the steering committee, because of those connections we made, we are getting to the granular level of information that when a Connor Spurn goes out in the field, she has the information she needs to help that individual get out of homelessness. So that was a long-winded answer to don't need any more meetings, need a lot more outreach.
Was a good answer.
May I just follow up? So I'm just looking at, maybe it's an ad hoc committee, maybe it's something for residents that they can go to and maybe hear from somebody. I'm not saying necessarily it has to be all the top level folks, doing this, but I feel like some of our committees are opportunities for public outreach, for public input. So, and I think with just, quarterly meetings, the community, might not feel as though they are participating or they have access to that information as readily.
I could say the answer to some of that. To go on what the mayor was saying, we do have these meetings quite regularly. I'm at least 2 or 3 times, if not more, a week. I'm speaking with Connor. And one of the things that we kind of learned out of it, having those bigger meetings, was to get the people together that can make decisions quickly. So Connor is one is out there, and if she sees an issue she needs addressed right away, she can call me. She has my cell phone. She calls me whenever, and then we can address it. So you're not going through the emails and the getting things done 3 days from now. And that's the same thing over at CAP. You know, I can tell you that we had recently there's services that Karen talked about with veterans. If there's a veteran that's homeless, they have specific services for them. We recently had a veteran out there that our officers located. I was able to get a hold of CAP. The next day, it just so happened, it was on Tuesday. Tuesday's the day that they do some of these outreach. He was able to get right out there that next day and follow up with real time right where this person happened. And we've done 2 of those this summer. This most recent one was about a month ago. So we're definitely having those meetings. But to that point too, part of what CAP does, and they've offered this when we just had some stuff happen in the south end about going and doing outreach. That's something that they do as far as outreach to the community to update of what's going on, what services are out there. So those are available to communities, and we can look to set some of those up. That is something that CAP has offered to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for presenting to us. A couple of questions came to mind with your presentation. You mentioned how we're having some success moving people out of homelessness, but then it's getting sort of backfilled. Do we have a sense, is there sort of a general trend that we're seeing as far as the people that we're seeing who are joining the ranks of the homeless?
It's at all levels. I mean, there's people camping who have full-time jobs. They just can't find a place to live. So, I mean, until some of these housing projects come online, where, you know, the numbers are holding steady. There's about 3 or 4 exiting on a averaging, we're averaging about 3 to 4 a month exiting homelessness, but we have another 3 to 4 coming into homelessness on a monthly basis. So until we have the housing supply that we can, maybe it's only 3 or 4 coming in, but we can get 8 to 10 out, then we'll start to see the numbers come down.
If I can ask a follow-up. You mentioned how, obviously, some of the encampments might be on city property or private property or state property. When we encounter issues on state property, I mean, do we have a contact person? Who's the state sort of point person on this?
Depends upon what department is in charge of the land. And that's, a lot of time it's DOT land. Relationship people that are there, and we all kind of gather together and we work on moving them on together, so there isn't really an issue.
Yeah, and if it's not DOT, then it's administrative services, and they've worked with us. So good to hear that.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to thank each and every one of you for your involvement. Chief Moulton, obviously I represent the South End, and there were 5 camps in September that were particularly challenging to the residents. There were a lot of, as you know, there was complaints that had been received about individuals who were in the encampments with attempted breaking and entering some of the homes. There was reports of drug paraphernalia being found on sites, and basically being some dangerous locations. If you could comment on a couple of things here, which is what you're finding at these various campsites and some of the challenges that you encounter in breaking these camps up quickly. I know we've talked about getting people into services, but one of the complaints that frankly I received, and I think other counselors will receive, is what's taking so long? I told you about this morning. Why is the camp still there? And that's obviously an exaggeration, but maybe you can comment more, maybe even using an example of the larger camp that was out behind Memorial Field as an example of some of the challenges.
No, absolutely. And it's not an exaggeration. That's what we get. Why aren't they removed immediately? And it is a challenge because we're going to, if we do move them, they're going to go somewhere. And if it's not, and I get some people, they they don't want to camp in the backyard. And it is concerning, especially, rumors get brought up too about different things that are happening at these camps. But what we're seeing at the camps, I mean, there's a lot of times they're not good. We're seeing drug paraphernalia, we're seeing drugs, we're seeing those types of things out there. I've also come across camps that are very clean. So it is a varying different degree. It really kind of depends. Some sites, like I said, have been really immaculate, and people have done some amazing things with what they have out there. To the other end, where they're just deplorable, it is a bad area. It's health issues. We've toured many of those. I'm sure most of you here has probably either seen pictures or been to them. And those are some of the concerning ones. They're just not as easy to quickly move like that. We try to, and that's why we really try to partner up with getting them services. I can't tell them where to go. I can't move them and tell them it's good to go to somebody else's land. It's just not something that we can do. So we'll try to again partner up and have outreach go out there and really try to make an impact to get them moved. And some camps we will move. We try to give them some time to get their stuff out of there. Otherwise, it's going to be sitting on the property. We try to get them to take it with them and move that. But it is challenging. You were looking for what was the example on? Which Memorial Field. So Memorial Field is it's private property where the camps are, so that does make it a little more challenging because now you got to work with the owner of the property. Sometimes owners are unaware that camps are out there. Sometimes they are aware and they're okay with it, so that makes it even more challenging to move if that's the case. So really on the Memorial Field side, right now, I believe there could be one individual out there, but I believe he is, if he's not gone now, he should be very, very shortly. That was my understanding. There was probably about 4 to 5 camps out there. We walked through that last week, and there was one individual. Each time we've gone there, he has not been there, and we've been working with the property owner, and they have agreed that it's not the best spot. So they are on board with that camp being vacated. So that's what we've been working with. I know CAP has gone out there and has been working with relocating that individual.
Thank you. And I guess, building on that, one of the things that I had heard through this process is that some of these encampments were present because of with permission, or whether it be tacit permission of the landowners. And when the landowners were shown pictures or videos of the property, there was kind of a state of shock, and this is not what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Please help us out now. There's a realization. And I guess what I took from that is there are a lot of good intentioned people who may not realize that they're not doing themselves or their neighborhood a favor by inviting encampments into the neighborhoods. I guess building off what was said earlier, what is your recommendation for people who want to help? Is it just to reach out to your organization? Is it to notify KSOC when they find an encampment? What would you recommend to anybody who is looking to make sure their neighborhood remains safe and basically encampment free?
I can just answer on the first end of that. If somebody does find an encampment on their property, I would ask them to call the police first before they went out there and addressed anything. That's probably the safest way. But then from there, absolutely, it is reaching out to CAP or to us, and we can easily communicate that over to the coalition to have them follow up.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. You have to be safety first for everybody, and so to be cautious. And if it's something you see in your neighborhood, I wouldn't recommend going out there alone or for the first time, because you don't know. And then calling, I mean, Deputy Chief Moulton here is fantastic. He's like constantly sharing information with everybody, or emailing to the KSOC is a great way. And the outreach workers for the Concord area are out every Tuesday. There's a huge group of them, the veterans, Waypoint, CAP, and then from our agency. They're all out canvassing the entire day. And then they do follow-up on Thursdays, and then they'll do, Connor started actually going down to the Merrimack County jail on Fridays for the people who are homeless that are down there, just making sure we don't lose touch with them, and we are on top of when they're getting released so that we can work with their social workers. So they're out a lot. You can just call or email those places and we'll get on it.
I have two more questions, Your Honor, but I can wait if that's appropriate. Next question is, we do have winter coming.
Yep.
Do we anticipate the problem lessening with winter as people relocate into warmer areas of the country, or?
We tend to have them kind of come in towards the city a little bit more in the wintertime. So they're more and around this area, but they certainly have the beds there available.
Yeah, the emergency winter shelter will open at the beginning of December, and that's, December to March. And then we will have been in conversations with the Friendly Kitchen, so we'll do extended hours on super cold days again, and because people they have a tendency to gravitate in at the winter time, and we've got 40 beds.
Thank you. And then the last question is, which I think you kind of addressed in part, which is, I think for myself, and I do believe I speak for others, the understanding is with winter months, people are going to just move out of New England and go down to some of the southern states. And what we're hearing is, no, people are going to relocate from the suburbs closer to the downtown part of Concord, which certainly suggests that the people who are living in encampments are from this particular area. Do you by chance know, whether it be through the HMIS data or through your own studies, the percentage of individuals who are homeless in Concord who actually originate from Concord?
I don't have the exact number, but the national statistic is that 70% of individuals that are homeless in a community are from that community originally.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you all are doing, and it's great to know about the coordination that's happening. I think really important steps forward. Are there additional things that you would request that the City Council do to support your work? And I'm thinking about things like even additional trash collection or things like that may help keep camps cleaner or provide more resources for folks. And then the second question I have, and I don't expect an answer here, but I'm just going to put it out there. When we ask people to move on and we don't have a place for them to go, what is that conversation? Or in other communities, have you seen any novel ideas that are under consideration?
Okay, I'll answer the first question first. Connor recently had come up with the concept that maybe to help keep the camps clean, that maybe we could get some of the blue bags from general services. And so when outreach workers are going out into the encampments, they can bring some of those blue bags and we can bring them to a centralized spot and have them picked up. So that was just a concept that we thought might work. And in terms of the second, there are a lot of novel ideas out there, but they're for bigger cities and areas. And I think when I look at the data and I see where people are for the county, and we had a conversation recently with the jail and the hospital, where you're having people being discharged into homelessness or people being released from jail into homelessness. If the county had a shelter of another 40 beds. That would be ideal. Because it's a county problem, it's not just a city problem.
Just to go on the trash issue too, and we've had, we've done that before. We've had, trash brought to some of these areas, and it works for a short period of time, but not over long term. If they're at least big bins, we put them there, and over the long term, we found that it hasn't worked. Sometimes they've just been set on fires, and vandalism has been done to those, unfortunately. But if they're short periods of time in short areas, it has helped. We did have a camp that cleaned themselves up fairly recently. That was beneficial.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Good. So, how many communities are in the county, roughly? 20-something, 30-something?
29.
So Councilor Champlin mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, trying to get to functional zero. So if we were able to create an additional house, 25 or 50 people, but 75 people then move into the community, is that a win, or is that not a win for the community? And is Concord, what other communities are you working with the entire county? Could you maybe give us some examples of what other communities are doing to solve this problem? Or is Concord going to solve the county problem?
At the moment, it feels like Concord is solving the county problem.
Right.
But that doesn't mean, there's a lot of work being done up in Franklin. And so the CAP agency is up there doing a bunch of work and outreach up in there. As the encampments get pushed out, we've got some more on the Pembroke line, some more on the Bow line, Chichester, we're kind of getting out and around. When we talk to people about housing, not all, if there's an opportunity in another community, then they often will take it. But some of it is, do you have a car? Does the individual have a car? So being out in a more rural area, that can work for them. Some people, it doesn't. They've got to be on a bus line or being in walking distance to services. So that kind of throws you back into Concord or Franklin.
So I guess it goes, to my point of the more we create, the more we'll attract.
The more we create.
If we can create more affordable housing, which we're all working towards doing, and shelter people, do you think that actually is actually a great accomplishment for everybody if we are able to do that? But will we end up actually having people more from the county come this way? I mean, can you ever get to functional zero if
I see where you're going. Yeah, yes, we can.
Yeah.
We can, because the thing is that once you get somebody housed and you can keep them stably housed, then they start becoming more contributing members to your community, and then there's a solve for the entire community.
Thank you.
Yep.
And just to add to that, Austin, Texas has reached functional zero. Rockford, Illinois has reached functional zero. Bakersfield, California has reached functional zero. And so has Abilene, Texas. And their model may not be our model, but I think we can get there.
Right. And in all those examples, I believe the county's definitely involved, and they're looking at it from a regional standpoint, not from each community coming up with its own solutions to solve a regional problem. So I think that.
What point well taken.
Yep.
Thank you. When you were doing the presentation, going through some of the information about where some of the 294 who are been homeless for more than a year are located, I was wondering, I know some of that count includes people who are in shelters and whatnot. Do we know what the number is of individuals who are actually unsheltered?
I have a guesstimate. Do you have a guesstimate?
You guys are, I believe with yours.
Probably just over 100. I'll go high and say 150.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Hawkins.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to something you said a moment ago, Karen, because it reminded me of a challenge that I'd encountered in trying to help a couple community members a couple years ago. So you mentioned that if there's shelter openings elsewhere in the state, that people will be directed towards those. Can you remind me, is that a state or federal law that if there's a shelter opening in a different location, you have to use that?
It depends on, it depends on where your funding source is. So that if you are funded through the state, which is then federal money coming in, if you get a call from 211 and you have an empty bed, that person has to come into your, you have to accept that person and get them transported to that shelter, if they will go. Our emergency shelter, we're not on that system, so we are, in the wintertime, we are sheltering the 40 individuals. They are Concord individuals.
So the particular experience I'm thinking of was two working families who we didn't have any openings in Concord, and they were sent to Nashua while their child care was here and their jobs were here. They had an unreliable vehicle, and now they had gas expenses on top of it. In your experience, does that state law actually sometimes create more harm to families or community members that's supposed to be supporting? And would you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but is that something, thinking about things that city council can do or weigh in on, is that an area that we could be helpful in?
That's that again is kind of a systems issue, and where people are going to go. I mean, I hesitate to weigh in on that because that's not kind of where our focus is. It's with adults, individuals. Families is a whole different dynamic, and so I'd have to defer that to somebody like the Friends Program or Families Promise, or maybe Families in Transition, who specializes in families.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So, since we're talking about encampments, I think it's interesting. So reading today's paper, it's like, break up the encampments, make them go away, get them, and this was a really unique situation because it was the first time we really had an encampment that was in a neighborhood. They've typically always been in more commercial areas or rural areas as such. This is really kind of a first. And you saw the, the whip back that happened because of it. So, you could see what happened last year in Manchester. Absolutely horrific situation, businesses closing down, people getting hurt, and it was, I think there was a person got shot. I mean, it was just, I just saw that Nashua is setting aside a piece of land that they basically, the city says, well, go camp here. They tell them to go camp there. So here we have, neighbors saying no encampments, we want to know what's going on, make sure they're gone, et cetera. You have another community whose answer to it is, we're going to set aside a piece of land, and we're going to tell you to go there, and we'll leave you alone. I'm just curious what your thought about Nashua and the situation happened in Manchester. I mean, are we moving that direction, or?
No, we're not moving in the direction of Manchester, first of all, because we're a really tight, close-knit, coordinated community that likes to work together. So, there's been a lot of national studies on sanctioned encampments, and they actually prove sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. The ones that work well are the ones that the city actually has a lot of the social workers and takes control of it and runs that sanctioned encampment, and those are in like Houston or some places in California. I'm not really in favor of a sanctioned encampment.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? I very much thank you for your input tonight and your update. If you wouldn't mind sharing the PowerPoint, I think there was a lot of information there that it was worthwhile sharing, and we could probably put a link to that on our website, right? Particularly with information about who to call and such. And with that, if there's no other, thank you very much. Okay. So we have no new business, we have no unfinished business, that, both those should come off unfinished. Next month, the parking committee met, and, no, what do we do? We were traffic, what are we?
Parking.
No, what was the other one? Transportation advisory. They met, and we'll get recommendations to us, so we'll take those next month. Gives us to comments, requests, counselors, who'd like to share, anybody? Councilor Brown.
Thanks. I actually have 3 things. I just want to acknowledge 2 incredible people. One of them is Chris Kane, who passed away recently. He served on the Merrimack River Greenway Trail. He was one of the founding members, served for 13 years. He was on the Conservation Commission about 10 years ago. We were out measuring trees together in the rain because we were trying to apply for a grant to help build the Merrimack River Greenway Trail. That's his dedication, and he stayed on the committee. So I just want to acknowledge Chris Kane and his dedication to our community, to green space and access to it. And the second person is actually, I believe she's here, it's Jessica Livingston, who organized the Multicultural Festival, which was phenomenal, was the biggest yet. It is, the festival is an economic driver with small businesses and a creative economy. People made more money than ever. The food vendors, the artists that performed are now included in different performance industries. So it's really just fantastic. So I want to shout out to Jessica and her incredible team of dedicated volunteers for the planning stage, for the execution. It brings so much to our community. I believe it was at the 16th year, your 10th year running this. Yeah, she's phenomenal, so I just want to thank her. And my last thing that I want to bring up is I want to acknowledge that we're in a campaign season. And actually, by the time we meet next month, we'll know if there will be, well, there's definitely going to be at least 4 new faces around the table, possibly 11. So I have a suggestion that I would like us to consider to add to the agenda next month with a potential public hearing in December, because when we have new people coming to the table, and this is such an important role, I love it as a city councilor, and I know all of you around the table do as well, but I think it's really important to welcome folks, to create that connection so that we can collaborate productively and effectively for our city's goals and priorities. And as a new counselor, I think something like what I'm suggesting would have been really helpful. So whether I'm on the council or not, I think that going forward, that this is important for our city council to have. So my suggestion is a retreat. I'm part of Leadership Greater Concord, and we experienced a retreat at Pat's Peak, and it was really fantastic. We actually didn't talk about our jobs at all. We got to know each other, kind of established some trust, talked about communication methods, and it was really helpful. And I think that this is something that all counselors, new, old, but are coming together for a common purpose, could really benefit from. So I actually met with the facilitator, and I asked if she would be available to lead a retreat for the new council. I would suggest after swearing in, but before the first council meeting. Some of the things that she has offered is an alignment of goals and values, strategies for constructive problem solving. People have different ways of learning and communicating, so that could be wonderful to understand before we start making policy decisions. So I have a list of some of the things that she suggested she's able to do. I also talked to the chamber who put it on for the cost. Now it cost, they said a facilitator fee could be $3,000 to $5,000. The room rental and food costs for a 9 to 4 retreat at Pat's Peak for 30 people was $2,400. So I would like to include consideration for a retreat on our November agenda with a public hearing in December. And I also know that there is a little bit of money available in the unassigned fund balance. There's 0.1% left, $45,000, which is more than enough to cover something like this that would create a cohesive, collaborative council going forward. So I would just ask that this might be considered to be in the November agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Manager Espella, could you just share with the community where we are with Monkey Around Playground?
Monkey Around Playground. The replacement of the Monkey Around Playground.
Yes,
Yes. So you might recall, the City Council authorized the application, two applications in 2022. I'm doing this from memory now. For the park on Canal Street and the replacement of the Monkey Around Playground at White Park. And we received a preliminary indication from Land and Water, those are Land and Water Conservation applications. So it has to go through the state and the federal government. And we received a preliminary indication that both should be successful. Traditionally, it's usually October, November when you get final say from the federal end about whether or not the funds will be awarded. So once we get that notice, of course, we'll notify the City Council. If and when we get that notice, we'll notify the City Council. And then after that, we could proceed towards doing both of those projects. Because remember, we don't appropriate all the dollars until, let's just talk about the Monkey Around Playground. We wouldn't appropriate until we know that we have the money in hand to do something. And of course, once you make application for those, then the money is dedicated strictly for that type of project. So so I'm hoping to hear this month, ideally. But if I do, I'll make sure we'll trumpet to the world that we were successful in getting, because that's a hugely important project, as is the Canal Street project.
Thank you very much.
Matt would correct me if I got any of that wrong, I'm sure. There we go, okay.
Anyone else?
Thank you. I was thankful this spring when Mayor Boulay decided to advance a DIJB committee, and I know that we all received a communication this past week from community members who were deeply invested in helping lead that work in our community about potential nominations to seat the broader DIJB committee. And so I wondered, Mayor, if there's an opportunity for us to have a discussion about that, or if you have some feedback on what you're thinking about the next steps in the process for that.
I didn't get any, did I get an email?
I believe we all received an email.
Who was it from?
It came from Pisto and Charm.
Okay, I'll go back and look at my email. Sorry about that. You can sit down, relax. It's okay. I'll talk to you afterwards. I'll try to find my email. Do you know when it came in?
I believe Friday. So I guess I would just say, if you haven't seen it yet, then that it had a list of, I believe, around 15 to 20 community members who've been doing this specific type of work in our community, and was a recommendation from a group that's come together called One Concord, which appears to be a lot of different community leaders and recommendations for what that broader committee could look like and who potential nominees could be for it.
Okay.
And then if
Thank
I may,
you,
one
I
other.
appreciate it. Please.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo, I thought Councilor Brown had a good idea about the retreat. I was thankful when I first came on in 2019, I didn't have an opportunity for this, but after my second reelection, or my first reelection, my second term, we had an opportunity to spend a day going around the city with city staff. I thought it was invaluable. I wish I'd had an opportunity to have that experience earlier in my term, because it really gave me some of the relationships and grounding that I needed to be a more effective counselor for my constituents. And I like the idea of having a similar type retreat that also incorporates just some team get to know you and bonding. I think everybody comes in with different relationships and backgrounds, and sometimes it's nice to just step back from the work for a minute, make sure that we're grounded in our values and principles and have an understanding of where each of us is coming from. So I would strongly encourage the council to look at that for putting it on the agenda for next month.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm just using every opportunity I have to remind voters out there that the polling location for Ward 1 has changed. We will no longer be voting at the Immaculate Conception Church on Bonnie Street. We will instead be voting at the Merrimack Valley High School Gymnasium. And parking will be available at the Merrimack Valley High School student parking lot, which provides easy access to the gymnasium door. So just a reminder for folks, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and I hope that I will see a lot of voters come out. And also, excuse me, the city clerk has done a terrific job with staff getting out the notices, postcards, and information, so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And since Councilor Kretovic is not here today, I'll just add that the polling location for Ward 3 has changed, I believe, to Beaver Meadow School on Sewell's Falls Road. And there is, again, adequate parking, and it's easily accessible to people with all physical abilities.
And if we're doing this, Ward 5 also, or Ward 4 is also changed from Boys and Girls Club to Green Street.
And I'll say that Ward 5 is at the Krista McAuliffe School. Please enter from the Rumford Street into the gymnasium.
Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilor Suggs.
Well, Ward 9 is still the community center. There is parking. And also in this agenda for tonight's meeting under information was the new Parks and Recs brochure. I hope all the counselors take a chance to look at that. There's some exciting programs for all ages, and scholarships are always available for children, not adults. So anyway, vote on Tuesday, November 7th, I believe it is. So thank you.
So all the polling locations are actually located on the website under elections in the city clerk's department. But I know the manager will put this on the homepage so everybody can see it. And I'll just remind everybody that this actually did go out with everybody's water bill as well. So there has been notice, but encourage you to get the word out as well. I said Councilor Hawkins will go next, and then Councilor Nye.
Thank you. So there was a consent report today. I didn't poll because of the absence of people who I thought could speak to it, and also I didn't think that we would necessarily have a different outcome on it. But I did want to draw attention to item number 23, which was the Heritage Commission's report around a request from the Finance Committee to review language in our budget pertaining to the history of Concord. And people may recall that part of this was around the acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples in our community. Yesterday, obviously, was Indigenous Peoples Day. I think our city is doing the right thing by acknowledging it as such and living our values in that way. This report was concerning to me because it said that it basically called into question whether Indigenous peoples had lived in this area and for how long. And so I would say that as we're making improvements to our documents and our website going forward, that I would certainly want us to take a closer look at that. It was concerning to me to have that questioned in some of our council reports. Thank you.
Councilor Nye.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, with those locations that have changed this year, will there be any notifications on the old locations, where it's been redirected?
Yes, thank you for the question. Public Properties, working with the clerk's office, is going to hopefully have those construction signs out at both of those polling locations.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Councilor Pierce.
I won't mention the polls at Bull Meadow at 7. But looking out upon the audience, I know that we have many candidates for council out there, and I think it's great that they're here to see this all happen in person before they get here, most of them. So, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay. So in terms of the proposal for workshop, I can tell you that, getting together is never a bad idea, but the challenges of a public body like we are in is that whenever we have more than 8 people, you have a quorum, and with a quorum, of course, you are subject to all the right to know parts of a meeting. So we've never done it as a council, kind of the get together and you can catch each other when you fall and all that stuff. Thank you. What I would say is, instead of bringing it up this year, I think really the appropriate time to bring it up is next January for the people who are here. I would rather see the new mayor, who that person is, really kind of put together an event for the council if they wish, if he or she wishes to do that. Madam Solicitor, can you talk a little bit about, getting together for Concord leadership is a private organization, there's no press that are there, but if we do that together, even if we're doing it out in, the woods of Ward 10, the press, it's an open meeting, right?
So you can have a meeting, it can be a social meeting, but if you put it out there and it was just a private social retreat, I think that would be okay. We'd want to double check it to make sure that you can exclude press or other people. But it would be imperative that it's just a social meeting. There's nothing in terms of the council matters that are being addressed at that particular meeting. Whether or not the public would be invited, I do think you might be able to exclude it, but I can double check on that.
I was going to say, when I served on the school board, we did do a retreat of sorts, which was on a Saturday morning for about 3 hours, but we always publicly noticed it, and it was understood that anybody could show up to it if they wanted to. And it took place in Concord, in the boardroom.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's interesting that Councilor Brown brought this up because a constituent who is a former school committee member brought the same idea up to me today on the phone. And I think it's an interesting idea. But I had the same concerns that the mayor had about public notice, having a quorum, things of that nature. I also agree with the mayor that it's something that probably should be left until the next administration.
I'm in favor of next year.
I second.
Your Honor, if I may, I confess this wasn't my idea. This actually came from the city solicitor. We had
I'm the deputy city solicitor.
we had a conversation about a cohesive council, and he had said that a retreat would be a great idea. There would have to be someone there to make sure that we did not discuss any policy things. And it was after that conversation with him that I then attended the Leadership Greater Concord retreat, and I said, oh, this is exactly what he had talked about. So in that case, maybe it would be the deputy city solicitor or the city solicitor also attending to ensure that there was no policy discussion happening.
I just want to say for the record, I wouldn't have any problem with something being public noticed and the public being able to participate or watch. We do that with city council priorities, which is a pretty important process, but is a little bit more of an informal process. And I think transparency and accountability is always great, and it's good for residents to know where we're coming from as well. And I would say the benefit of taking this up next month would be that the council could do it as they're beginning together instead of waiting and kicking the can down the road a couple of months, by which time they're already taking votes and making decisions without having that grounding together.
Great, okay. Thank you much, appreciate it. Anybody else want to share? See none? Mr. Manager, do you have anything you want to share?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, do you want to share anything?
We have absentee ballots available. Oh, yeah. For anyone that's going to be out of town on election day, we do have absentee ballots available at the clerk's office.
There you go. All right, we have no suspense items, so we'd like to make a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. All right.